respected Mr. Lamy, respected Ms. Francis, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to return back to Geneva and to meet the old friends and visit the old buildings. And in this connection, I would express my sincere thanks to Ms. Francis for your kind invitation and very well-organized event to mark the 10th anniversary of China's accession to WTO. IDC, under your leadership, has played a very important role in the trade promotion, especially the export promotion in the developing countries, and especially among the private sectors. And I would like also to give my special thanks to Pascal Lamy, who himself is part of the process of the negotiation as the Trade Commissioner of EU at that time. And especially as Director General, he has played such an important role to make WTO still important and relevant to China. So every time Mr. Lamy comes to China, the Chinese have a feeling that WTO is coming again. Ladies and gentlemen, I have said that I've come to Geneva to express my thanks to all the people who have helped China in this difficult accession process, including many staff in the Secretariat of WTO, and especially those negotiation partners who has made tremendous efforts to make this possible. And here we have Mr. DePel, the EU representative for a long time, and worked very hard and bring a lot of efforts and hope in the negotiation. So I thank you very much for you to come and join us today. Of course, of all the people that would like to express our thanks is Ambassador Girard, the chairman of the Working Party of China. And he has made such tremendous efforts and make such an outstanding contribution to this negotiating process. I believe that all the Chinese will never forget it. I can say that the negotiating team in China have a very high respect for Ambassador Girard, for his expertise, professionalism, as well as for his wisdom, patience, persistence, and tolerance. I think with all these qualities, he has achieved almost mission impossible to integrate the biggest planned economy in China into the world market economy club. This is a historic mission, a mission almost impossible, and he did it. So we thank him that he shared all this disappointment, success with the Chinese team in all these 15 years of long march. It's really a long march. And it so happened today we see that another working party of Russia has concluded its work, and we sincerely congratulate them. And we also recognize that they have beaten our record. Ours is 15 years. Theirs is 18 years. At that time, we thought that the 15 years record will never be beaten by any other countries. But to our great disappointment, it was beaten. But Ambassador Girard, I think we should be not worried too much, because the chairmanship of the Russian Working Party has been shared by three people. And you yourself are the single person to be the chairman of the China Working Party for 15 years. So you are still the longest serving chairman. the fact that Russia has broken China's record also makes me somewhat relieved, because China's taken such a long time to get into WTO. Some people was making such comment, saying that maybe the Chinese government has made a mistake, the point someone called Mr. Long to be the chief negotiator. And that doomed the negotiation for so long. And now we can see clearly 15 years is long, but 18 years is even longer. Ladies and gentlemen, in spite of all the disappointment and hard work we have experienced in the 15 years, I believe that the Chinese WTO accession has brought tremendous efforts and brought tremendous benefit to the Chinese in the last 10 years. Maybe I can summarize in 3 aspects. China's WTO accession has made China a country of planned economy into the mainstream of the market economy. And a country in the mainstream will have a very different views of multilateral system, on the multilateral rules, on the international practice. That is why in the last 10 years we have brought so many new concepts into China. Those WTO basic principles, such as national treatment, transparency, and win-win. And even today, we're making the principle of WTO of non-discrimination as a weapon to defend the interest of small and private industry in China. It is still very, very valuable. And WTO also changed the whole business environment in China. Transparency was something not very long in China for a long time, and it didn't exist in the Chinese dictionary in political and social terms. So there's a saying in China that if the water is too clean, there will be no fish. That means that if you want to make money in the business world, you have to fish in the troubled water. That means transparency has changed the whole business environment, the business practice in China because of the accession of WTO. And secondly, because of China's WTO accession, we have brought healthy and positive pressure to the domestic industry in China. Any domestic industrials need some pressure from outside. Otherwise, you will not be international competitive. And through all these years, many of the industries which we negotiated has already gotten very, very strong. And one thing is very clear, and also I would like to report to you that last year, China becomes the largest car manufacturing and car marketing in the world, 18 million in total. And this has a lot to do with China's WTO accession, because through China's WTO accession, we have lowered the tariff of cars, and we have discarded the quota system of imported cars. And that brought down the import price of cars and make the domestic and the joint venture car industry in China very, very competitive. 10 years ago, a private car was a kind of luxurious for ordinary Chinese. And nowadays, millions of Chinese have their own family cars. So for trade negotiators, we see such kind of things, we feel very, very, very satisfied because our efforts paid. When we first got into negotiations, it was GATT. At that time, some people say GATT is a general agreement for talk and talk. That means GATT WTO was only a talk shop, and you can hardly make any changes in the real life and real industrial. But it's not true. In China's practice, our negotiation has changed the whole industrial in China and make it competitive. Our China's WTO accession has also brought practical benefit to the average Chinese on the street. That is why I hope that all the negotiators in Geneva will not underestimate the importance of their negotiation, because it contributes to the welfare of the people and contribute to a fair, free trading system. China's WTO accession has improved China's external trade and economic environment. In the last 10 years, China has made tremendous efforts to expand its trade, thanks to a better external environment. In this connection, I would like to mention our relationship with the United States. Before China's WTO accession, China's most favored nation status has to be reviewed by U.S. Congress on an annual basis. And every year, it brought unpredictability and stability to the China-U.S. trade relationship. During the trade negotiations of China's accession to WTO, we have asked the United States to commit that once China concludes agreement with the United States, they have to give China permanent most favored nation treatment. And the U.S. has agreed to that. So immediately after we signed a bilateral agreement with the United States in December 1999, President Clinton and his team worked so hard to work on the Congress and make Congress amend their domestic laws and take China out of the Jackson-Vanik list. And from that time on, the annual review of China's most favorable MFN status was eliminated. And that gave a very stable U.S.-China relationship since then. That is why we think the negotiation, including China's WTO accession, can make a difference of the international relations, especially international trade and economic relations. So China's WTO accession has proved that trade negotiations could change the mindsets of the people and even change and reinforce the policy directions of one country. Trade negotiation can increase and enhance the competitiveness of its domestic industries and make it more internationally cooperated. And trade negotiations can improve the international atmosphere and international trade economic relations. So we think that trade negotiation can work, and work for the better of the world and for the better of its people. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to talk about China's role in the new world economic order. I'm not sure whether we are already having a kind of new international economic order. I believe that the old order is still very much alive and kicking. So at most we can say that we're in the process of shaping a new economic order. And what we should try to do is help to shape a new world order with more justice to the people, with more justice to the developing world, especially the LDCs. And in Geneva, I think what we should do to shape a new economic order is to strengthen WTO, to strengthen the multilateral system, and also to bring to the conclusion of the Doha round in one way or another. And we have to make a credible and satisfied explanation to the developing world, especially the LDCs. They are entitled to a credible and convincing explanation of how it has gone and what benefit it should get. Because after all, Doha round is a development round. Now the Doha round is in a very difficult process, and we don't know how to break this kind of deadlock. It needs the wisdom and collective efforts of all the negotiating parties concerned. What I can do today is to share you some of the lessons that we had in our negotiation process to exceed WTO. I think the following points are very important for any negotiators. Number one, you have to have a very positive and constructive attitude towards negotiation, on the assumption that there's always a way to achieve a win-win result. You should have this kind of confidence. You should work on this kind of confidence. Otherwise, you are always being very tough. My experience told me that being tough in the negotiation is the easiest thing in the world, because you don't have to do your homework, because you don't work hard before you come to the negotiation table. And also you get some political plus domestically. This is not the way to participate in the negotiation. I think the difficult part of the negotiation is to do a very good homework and look at all the details and find the solutions and find the compromise. I think this is the most difficult part of the negotiation. If you are always trying to say something very tough, sometimes for domestic consumptions, you complicate the whole thing, because you give wrong signal to your domestic general public and your departments in your capital, and they will not support you, because the kind of very tough words that you express in the negotiation will prevent them to make an appropriate decision, and they will not support you. You complicate the whole situation. And Ambassador Girard just told me that you have to look at the details. You have to work on all these papers. So we follow his advice, and we do a very good homework, and try to convince from our grassroots division chiefs in the ministries up to our political leaders what are being negotiated, what are the details we have to deal with. I think this is the only way to do the negotiation. It's not the kind of high-sounding words, the tough words, the bluffing that will work. Secondly, I think that even though the negotiations is taking place in Geneva, but you have to mobilize the domestic support. You have to tell your people what you are negotiating in Geneva. You should do your best to build up a kind of consensus in order to support your position in the negotiation tables. I would like to say that we Chinese did very well to promote WTO in China. In the latter part of the negotiations and before WTO accession, I and my senior colleagues went around to all the provinces and the cities and visit all the CEOs of big enterprises and meet all the farmer representatives to tell them what is being negotiated, what kind of benefit it might get from this kind of negotiations. That is why we did such tremendous efforts to build up a consensus among the domestic part. And that formed the basis for the success of the negotiation. Once the consensus was built up among the general public, the political leaders will make a decision, and that will give the most important support to the negotiators in Geneva. So our experience also shows that you have to work hard in the building up of the consensus domestically. You cannot just work single-handedly in Geneva and say something which are useless. Because of our work, WTO was so popular in China at that time. Almost everybody was talking about WTO. I remember that before China's WTO accession, I accompanied a senior staff from WTO to visit a coast city in China. And one day we went along the beach, and this senior official of WTO happened to be in a fisherman's house. And he went to visit the fisherman's house, and to his great surprise, he saw a book, China and the WTO, on this fisherman's desk. Even though he doesn't know Chinese, but he knows WTO. It's why an ordinary fisherman should study WTO. I said, this is the way that we build a consensus in general public in order to win their support. This is all trade negotiation about. If the trade negotiation is irrelevant to the interest of the people, it's irrelevant to the interest of the business. If it is irrelevant to your own national people, then you will never get this negotiation done. That is why we think that this is a very important part of the Chinese experience in the negotiations. Finally, I would like to say that to make a negotiation success, you have to take obligation according to the principle of balance between the obligation and the right. In the very beginning of China's WTO accession, we always say that China is a big country and WTO needs China. So we take it for granted that you should support us. It is wrong. This is an organization deal with all these trade matters to very much details. So you cannot just say something which is irrelevant to the specific obligations you have to take. To take the obligations on behalf of your own government is a very tough thing. You have to convince the ministries concerned behind. You finally have to convince your political leader. But for any negotiations, if all the parties are willing to take its part of obligations inconsistent with its own ability, I think the negotiation will have a hope. If everybody is talking about others' obligations and without talking about your own obligation, then it will be an endless negotiation and it will never come to fruition. So people are asking about China's role in the new order. Of course, we're going to take China's obligations. China is still a developing country, that's very clear. But at the same time, China is not a developing country 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when China were succession negotiation completed, our trade volume is only about $500 million US dollars. Now it's $3 trillion US dollars. And at that time, we're only number 6 in the world trade order. And now we're number 2. So sure, China should take a much bigger obligations in the future negotiations and in the shaping of the new global orders. But the question is that China cannot do it single-handedly. If China do it single-handedly, it will be useless, because this is not a bilateral negotiations as China did in its accession negotiations. And China And that negotiation, China as a party is talking with the rest of the members of WTO. So if China wants to take its obligations consistent with its capacity, then the negotiation can move on. But now it's a multilateral part of negotiations. All the party concerns should make collective efforts and share its responsibilities and obligations. If China is willing to take up its obligations and has agreed to take its obligations, but the other party will not respond, then we might have difficulties to sell to our general public at home. So, undertake obligations should be a collective effort, should involve all the parties concerned, especially those big players. Without the collective efforts to undertake obligations, you can hardly say that China can make the difference. China cannot, no matter how strong China would be in the future. That is why I would like to say China is willing to play an important role, constructive role in the new order, but we have to make that effort together with the rest of the parties and make it actually realized. Finally, I would like to say we should work hard, especially those people in Geneva, to strengthen WTO and the multilateral system and make WTO an effective, efficient, and respected organization, and make it a part of the new order of the future. However, the situation seems very disappointing at this stage. And a few days ago, I spoke in a national conference in China about WTO. I said, it seems to me China is leaving China farther and farther. 10 years ago, when China acceded to WTO, the whole China embraced with open arms of WTO. But after 10 years, WTO's impact and influence in China is declining, and that is a fact. I think there are some reasons for that. Number one, the Doha round has encountered difficulties and is in deadlock. And the people in China see no chance or very little chance for the conclusion of the Doha round. They do not know what happened to this multilateral system. They ask a lot of questions. Especially they know that the Doha round is a development round. If the negotiating partners cannot reach consensus on a development round, what do they want to do? So that's weakened the kind of confidence of the people on WTO. And secondly, there are numerous FTA everywhere. I don't know how to pass judgment on FTA, but personally, I do not believe FTA is a good choice for a global system. Numerous FTA were shaking the foundation of multilateral system, and I believe that it's already being shaken. And thirdly, I also see some countries, especially the major players, always make a double standard to WTO rules. They try to be the champion of WTO, but in actual fact, they practice trade protectionism and pay lip service to WTO rules. And that also endangers the credibility of WTO. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that WTO now is hopeless and was in a very difficult situation, and that is a fact. But we have to work hard. We have to realize, even though WTO is not perfect, but WTO is still the best options for us to create a free, fair, and just trading system from the world. For that, we have to work together. We have to make WTO as part of the new order, as a part of the global new order, together with other multilateral systems. That is why I would like to avail this opportunity to call on all the people, especially those negotiators in Geneva, to make a great contribution to strengthen and not jeopardize the WTO system. And a strong, effective multilateral system is in the interest of all the nations and the global order. Thank you very much.